All right, so this is sort of a continuation from the last section, but it feels a little different. It's not going to have any truth tables in it, so for those of you who are like hating those truth tables, you cannot be hating in this section, okay? Okay, so we're going to do something a little bit different. This is more on the conditional, and our leading idea says the following. In logic, from a simple conditional, we discover echoes, the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive, each revealing a new way to see the same truth. In faith, too, there are reflections and reversals, moments when trust leads to grace, when doubt questions belief, and when absence highlights presence. Just as these forms dance around the central idea, faith in God invites us to explore life's mysteries from many angles, deepening our understanding and enriching our journey. So one of the ways that you've probably seen this in your life at some point is, when are you most actively involved in your faith? For some of you, it's when things are going really good. Life's on a high, everything's going really well. And for some of you, it's when things are at a really low place, right? It's that reversal. That in order to get us back in tune with what we're supposed to be doing with God and our relationship with God, it takes something bad happening to bring you to a place where you really need Him again. So that's what you're seeing happening here in this description. So we saw conditional statements happen last time, these if-thens, a statement that can be written with that P arrow Q. The three statements that were referenced in the leading idea were converse, inverse, and contrapositive. Now, just in terms of symbols, what you see happen for converse is you see them switch places. P was at the beginning, now P is at the end. Q is at the end, now Q is at the beginning. That's the converse. Inverse, they don't switch spaces. P is still at the beginning, Q is still at the end, but they both have negation symbols on them now. And for contrapositive, you do both. You swap the order and you negate. So we have tilde Q at the beginning, and we have tilde P at the end. Now, there are some equivalencies within these statements. When we take a implication P arrow Q, it is equivalent to flipping it around and negating it. It's equivalent to its contrapositive. And we'll look at some examples so that you can see that happen with context. And the same is true for contrapositive. Okay? I said that right. For converse and inverse is what I meant to say. The converse and the inverse are the same thing. In fact, they're contrapositives of one another. Okay? So if I switch the order, or if I leave the order the same and negate them, I create statements that are equivalent. And once again, we do this in English all the time, and we don't even think about it at all when we do it. We just do it naturally. So jot those in. It's going to take a minute, I know, and then we're going to do some examples so you can see how this works. Is anybody still working on that one? Turn it down. A couple of you still? Okay. Okay, I think we're good. Yes? If not, let me know. Okay, so let's take a look at an example. So the directions say the following. We're going to find the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. And then there's this sort of warning, if you will, at the end of the directions that says, it may be helpful / necessary to write the statement in if-then form to start. So this first one, it's already done for you. but it's not always an if-then form. When we encountered that in section 3.3, right, where things weren't in if-then form, like the shopaholic has no self-control, and we had to put the if and we had to put the then in and we had to restructure the language a little bit, that may be necessary before we start and do the process. This one's not. It says, if you love God, you will obey his commands. We talk to our kids in our household about this all the time, that if they love us too, they should also be obeying us. I had the same conversation at my table in my office with a daughter last night who was telling me she was not going to do something that she's going to do. She's going to, right? And I even said to her, the Bible says that you're supposed to obey your parents. And if you don't obey your parents, that's sin. You're going to do this. All right? This is the deal. So if you love God, then you will obey his commands. It doesn't have the word then in, but as you've seen us do before, the then, of course, is right in between those two statements. You loving God is one piece, and you obeying his commands is the other. Also, just like we talked about in the previous section, sometimes we have to change some verbs around to make it make sense with the linguistics of English, and that's okay. All right, so converse is our first one. Converse takes the two statements, and it switches them around. Okay? So the loving God is going to move to the end, and the obeying his commands is going to move to the beginning. Does everybody see that I'm talking about? Does it make sense? Okay. So we're going to start with, it's still going to have the if at the beginning. The if and the then don't move. Okay? Please don't move the if and the then. The if stays at the beginning, the then stays in the middle. So instead of it saying, if you love God, what is it going to say? Yeah, if you obey, and feel free to use the word God at the beginning. So if you obey God's commands, and then the then comes, and what's it going to say after the then? Then you love God. Okay. We're going to talk about the equivalency parts after we write them all down, but let's just write them all down first. So B is inverse. So inverse doesn't flip them. It takes the statement and leaves them exactly where they were, but it negates them. So instead of saying at the beginning, if you love God, it's going to say, if you do not love God. Okay, that's what it's going to say. If you do not love God. Again, we're going to have a then. And then we need to negate the second part as well. Then what? Then you will not, or you do not, whatever verb you want to use there is okay. Then you do not, I'm going to say it past tense, do not obey his commands. Feel free to leave it as will if you want, it doesn't matter. Okay, is that right? Okay, first one, we switched the order. Second one, we negated both pieces but left the order the same. The third one, the contrapositive, switches the order and negates it. So now I'm not going to have you love God at the beginning. What's the beginning after the word if going to say? Okay, say it again for me.
If you obey his commands.
Okay, close. If you do not obey his commands. So we're going to move the command part to the beginning, and we're going to negate it. So it's going to say, if you do not, that doesn't look very good, but let me see here. My handwriting got a little wonky there. If you do not obey his commands, then what's going to follow? Right. Then you do not love God. Okay, so according to the chart that you guys created, and you filled in, right? These two statements go together as equivalent, and these two statements go together as equivalent. So I want you to think through the individual statements so that you can justify in your mind that that makes sense, because it does make sense, okay? So this says, if you love God, then you will obey his commands, okay? So if you have a true and authentic relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ, you want to do what he wants you to do. You want to do the things that he tells you to do. You will obey his commands. That's part of how we live out our faith. And likewise at the bottom, if you are choosing not to obey his commands, you are choosing not to show love. Now, maybe you love him to some degree, or maybe you're just being rebellious, but that's what you're choosing in that moment. You are choosing not to show love. That's equivalent on the bottom. The parts in the middle are different, and they are very different. Because you probably know people who are good, quote unquote, moral people. They follow the rules, but they're not doing it with the right motive. They're doing it to please their mom and dad. They're doing it not to get in trouble. They're doing it out of some sort of sense of obligation, but they're not doing it out of a sense of loving God. And they don't have to love God to do that. So it is different to say, if you obey God's commands, I didn't say that one. Yeah, if you obey God's commands, then you love God. That doesn't have to follow, right? It could follow, but it doesn't have to. And likewise for the second one, if you do not love God, right, it's certainly possible that you are not following the do not obey God's commands. Those two are the same statement in reverse. Okay, let's do another one where we can actually look at something that has food in it. I like food examples. They work out pretty well in our minds. Really easy to decide which ones are actually the same as each other. This is also a good one that is not in if-then form. Milk contains calcium. So our first thing we have to do is to rewrite that statement so it's an if-then form, or we can't do the rest of them anyway. So how am I going to rewrite milk contains calcium so that it starts out with an if? Okay, good. If it is milk. There you go. Not hard, right? I mean, but we got to put it in that form too. Then it contains calcium. And you can verify it, right? It says it on the label, right? You can see it there. Okay, so our first one, our converse is supposed to switch the order. So what's it going to say? Yeah, if it contains calcium, then it is milk. That's the converse. The contrapositive leaves the pieces the same, but it negates them, right? So how will it start? Not quite. If it is not milk, make sure you go back up to the original statement. So if it is not milk, then it does not contain calcium. And the last one switches the order and it negates them. So what's it going to say? If it doesn't contain calcium, then it is not milk. Okay, so is everybody okay with the rewriting parts? So let's justify again why it is that the original statement and the contrapositive are the same, and why the converse and the inverse are the same. Okay, if you go get a gallon of milk, and I don't care what kind of real milk it is, whether it's 2%, whole milk, skim milk, doesn't matter, and you look at the label, it's going to say calcium and there's going to be some in it. It's not going to say 0 next to it, right? So that's the first part, milk contains calcium. Likewise, if you get the label of a product, but you don't know what the product is, and it says calcium 0, you know for sure it's not milk. Does that make sense? So those are the first and the last statements. The two in the middle, it's fortified orange juice. It's yogurt. It's cheese. None of those things are milk, and they do have calcium, correct? So if you got the product, it would not be milk, but it would contain calcium. If you got the product and it said it didn't have did have calcium, it would not necessarily be milk. You can't look at the label and know you have milk. But sometimes you can look at the label and know you don't have milk. Okay. Now, while it's true that we can flip these around, we can also flip them around with symbols, because there's nothing special about doing it with words. So we're going to do a real quick symbol swap. It's already in if-then form. Our first one is converse. Converse means that we just switched the order of what we presently have. So the order right now has tilde P in front, so the tilde P will move to the end. And it has Q at the end, and it's going to move to the front. You're just switching locations. Okay, does that make sense? It's just symbols. Okay. The second one is supposed to leave the symbols from the original statement where they are, but negate them. Now, the problem, so to speak, is that it starts out as negation of P. So when I negate the negation of P, what do I get? I get P. So now I have P at the beginning. And it ends with Q, but I'm going to negate that as well, so I get tilde Q. You got it. And then the contrapositive swaps the order and it negates them. So instead of getting tilde P at the beginning, I'm going to get what at the end? P. So I'm going to move it to the end, and I'm going to switch it out for P. And the Q that was at the end is going to move to the beginning, and I'm going to switch it out for tilde Q. Okay, so a little bit more now about English. Yes, Jeremiah, first.
All we're doing is just inverting it a few times.
Well, so converse inverts it, it switches. Inverse leaves the order the same, whatever it was originally, drops it down, but it negates it. And contrapositive does both. It inverts it and negates it. Yep. Okay, you ready to look at some English stuff you're not going to like very much? Told you English was confusing, and here's a chart that tells you some of it. If-then statements occur in many forms. We've only looked at a couple of them so far, and now we're going to look at a bunch more. You got if P then Q, and we've looked at the second one actually by example as well, if P Q, where we just kind of put the then in. You saw me put an arrow and then in the middle of all of them. Those are the same. You've heard me say P implies Q. The next one's different. It says P only if Q. Notice the if's in the middle, but it's including the word only next to it. When we put the word only with the word if, it doesn't change the order. It's actually in the right order. P only if Q means P implies Q, or if P then Q. That one's the most confusing, I think. I'll show you an example of one of that in a second. A couple others that we use in more formal English are things like this. P is sufficient for Q, or Q is necessary for P. We're not going to see those show up very frequently, but in your reading and things like your comp classes or in Civ, you may see language like that used. It's a more formal language. The next one, very similarly, came from my milk. Milk contains calcium. If we put the word all, you would have seen it. All milk contains calcium. It's sort of inherent in the phrasing there. All P R Q. That's an if-then statement. And then we saw the last one where it's backwards and the if is showing up in the middle. So Q if P means if P then Q. It's another one. This is English, right? It's how we speak. It's an English situation, a language situation that is inherent in how we think about and we determine our logic, which is mathematical thinking. English and math they're just inseparable. You don't think that. Some of you are like, I'm an English person. Well, did you know? They actually go hand in hand. It's crazy. Okay, so what we're going to do in the next 3 examples is simply, I think these are our last 3 as well. Is that true? Yeah, 3 examples. We're simply rewriting an if-then form. So this is some of that practice for if-then form. While it's not directly on your homework, there may be places where you have to rewrite something in order to be able to think through a truth table, so it goes kind of nicely with it too. This says all whole numbers are integers. This is the all P or Q form, right? We're still going to put the if at the beginning, and we're going to change the structure of the language slightly if we need to, right? Verbs and so forth to make it make sense. I can't just say if all whole numbers then are integers. Like you can't just throw them in. It doesn't work great. But I'm going to keep the spirit of what's going on. So it says all whole numbers are integers. How could I rewrite that if I start out with if?
If it's a whole number.
Yeah, go ahead. Keep going, Gabriel.
If it is a whole number, then it is an integer.
Fantastic. Okay, so if it is a whole number, then it is an integer. This is the third one we've seen like this today, because we saw one about the shopaholics, same form, and we saw one about the milk. Yes, ma'am.
So like you don't have to keep the all part of it. Like if it's one of those like if it's sufficient or necessary or a different translation, you don't need to keep that.
You won't keep all those pieces. You're going to drop the pieces out that are not necessary for writing the if at the beginning, the then in the middle, and you're going to keep the rest of the language, if not even the structure possibly in the sentence. Yes. Okay, let's try another one. This one's the most confusing because why? Do you see it? It has the only if in it. Does everybody see that only if? Okay, so only if is not the same as if in the middle. If that only matters. It significantly changes the structure, okay? So we see only if here in the middle. So when we see only if in the middle, what it means I'm going to do is I'm going to move the if to the beginning and very little else is going to change. I'm not moving things around. I'm not changing orders. If moves to the beginning, then goes in where the only if is. And again, if we need to structure the language a little bit differently, we can do that. So this one's going to say if, and then we're going to go on. So the original statement says the principal will hire more teachers only if the school board approves. I am going to change my verbs. If the principal, and I'm going to use the present tense hires instead because it doesn't make a lot of sense to say will hire. It's structurally weird. That's not how we talk, right? That's not English structure. So if the principal hires more teachers, then what? Then the school board approves. That's what only if in the middle of a sentence does. It's awkward. We use it, but we don't use it near as frequently as the other ones. Okay? If the principal hires more teachers, then the school board approves. You could say then the school board will approve. Throw the word will in there if it makes you feel better. It doesn't matter. The structure, like the tense of the verbs is not the deal. Last one. The square of a two-digit number whose units digit is 5 will end in 25. Gotta throw something mathy in at the very end, right? This is a true statement, by the way. I don't know if the second one's a true statement or not because it probably depends on the school board and the principal. All right, so the square of a two-digit number whose units digit is 5 will end in 25. I need an if at the beginning. If what?
The square digit number is 5. Then it will end.
Okay, say it a little louder for me, Jeremiah. I didn't catch the beginning part.
If the square digit of a number whose digit is a 5 will end in 10 will end.
Not quite. Okay, so the result part is actually talking about how it ends, right? It ends in a 25. That's the consequent, right? That's the conclusion. What's the initial premise? What has to happen for it to end in 25? Slow down, Neely.
Sorry.
That's okay. The square goes along with the 25 part. These pieces go together. The square being the 25 is the part that those two pieces are connected. What kind of numbers is it telling you end in 25? Okay, so it's the two-digit numbers whose unit digit is 5. I think that's what I was hearing echoes of throughout, correct? That piece right there, I should have done it in a different color. We'll highlight it or do it in pink. This piece right here is the if part. This is the type of number we're talking about. It's a two-digit number, and it ends in 5. All right, so think about it like 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, 85, 95. Those are the numbers it's talking about. Okay, so if a number is 2 digits, this is not the only way you could write it, but it works, 2 digits, and I'm going to say ends in 5. Feel free to say, and its unit digit is 5, but it ends in 5. That's what it means. Ends in 5. Then, I'm going to even say then its square ends in 25. That's what this statement is saying, but it's worded very confusing the first way it was worded. I think it actually makes a lot more sense in the if-then form we wrote. If it ends in a 5 to start with, I end up with a 25 at the end of it when I square it.